what did you do with Yoga Meets Travel? Like, were you, because you travel a lot of places, were you going to these places and doing yoga and like posting content about that, or what were you doing?
So, okay. So I even got into I played lacrosse in college. So I'm from the East Coast, played lacrosse in college, went through a terrible breakup in college and lost a big sense of my identity, who I was with. And then lacrosse was kind of over and I had a foot surgery. And so I was like trying to find another way to work out that wasn't what I had done my whole life, basically, and that was better for my body. And so I got into yoga, and it was also like looking back, it was like I was broken. I had just been
Yeah.
like cheated on. I went through a guy I dated all 4 years of college. Like it was brutal. So
Yeah.
I was seeking healing and I was seeking a new identity. And I was I was seeking all the things in the wrong place,
Yes.
all
Yes.
the right things in the wrong place.
Amen.
Um, so got really big into yoga, started working at Lululemon part-time. I knew I wanted to move to California because I originally wanted to get into news and television and production, which is what I had internshiped with in college and studied. And so that kind of got Lululemon obviously is big on a lot of working out clothes in general, but on yoga as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I full send moved across the country to California. And I was in news for a few years. And what's ironic now looking back is that what kind of got me out of news was just how either superficial and fake it was, or depressing and dark.
Oh,
And
wow.
I would have a lot of nightmares and night terrors about what I would watch it on the news all day at work,
Yeah.
which is wild now because that was like God directing me even then, of like how much He's always kind of spoke to me in my dreams, but never as
Mm.
much as uh, what is happening, what has happened now. But it was all just like foreshadowing. But
Yes.
anyway, so yoga was kind of like part of my healing journey. And then I moved to California where yoga is like very big and everything's so healthy and there's avocado toast everywhere and there's
Yes.
smoothie bars everywhere. And it's like, wow. Cause like a lot of cities have caught up to that now, but 10 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Right.
So I was like, wow, this is so great. Like healthy living. This is amazing. Meditation. Like, whoa, I just was like taking it all in, kind of full sending. Um, I went through my yoga teacher training at a studio called Raw Yoga, which is named after the sun god Ra, which
Yes.
we'll get into that. Okay. Because I did not think anything about that
Right. And just for the
until,
listeners to know too, I know you told me you haven't told us on the episode yet, you grew up Catholic. So you sort of
yeah,
had that background, that upbringing. So
I
maybe like
still always believed in Jesus
mhm,
because I was taught to, and it was in my heart. So like
yeah.
it was in my heart because I was taught that, but it wasn't like personal, intimate relationship, which has now changed over the last year.
Yeah.
Like I was like, wow, this man that I was told to believe in is like actually real. Like
Yes.
that is what I'm like even telling to my own family. I'm like, I think it's amazing that we believed in this, and it's incredible that that can get passed on. But that's where a lot of things get, unfortunately, people go astray or they get rubbed the wrong way because not everyone has had like, I don't know, not everyone has different experiences of where they are on the Christianity spectrum, I guess,
Mhm.
but or in their walk with the Lord. But yeah, so I'd always believed in Jesus, but I didn't think me going to yoga and me like healing myself and find other ways of healing would ever hinder that or matter. And like the people that had said it was demonic were like super crazy priests that thought everything was a problem. And I was like, if I'm never going to be that, then like, this is
Yeah.
healing. This good people are nicer here than some people were to me at church. So like
Yeah.
feels good.
No.
My body looks good.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm learning how to be more calm. I'm like, there was all these benefits that I was like, which, still stretching and treating your body right for sure, 100%.
Of
But
course.
we get into what's separate is what it's rooted in. And our God is a God of roots and our God is a God of hearts. And that I had to learn those lessons separately before we even got to the yoga story of why I had to be pulled out and why it was a problem because I had no idea. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
And it goes back to the fact that, like, yes, you grew up, having this sort of vague understanding of God, but you didn't, really learn about him or like build that
Yeah.
relationship with him. So it
Yeah.
makes sense why you could be easily, sort of led astray into these more new
Open-minded,
age.
just
Yeah,
so open-minded.
exactly. So tell us, like, how did he reveal that to you about yoga, and what were you like, what did you realize about yoga?
Ugh. Well, and so I was in news and then I got into aviation. I didn't even fully answer your first question, but
Okay.
like, so I got certified, and so I was already certified in yoga. I did that while I was in news. And then
Okay.
when I went into flying, I actually had lost my old Instagram. My old Instagram was called Yogi Barbie, and it got deactivated because I had like music that, like, it was before music was even on Instagram, and I
Okay.
had made like GoPro videos and whatever. So I was like, I need to make a new account, or what should I name this? And I was like, well, I love yoga. Yoga will always be part of my life. That's like my life, that's
Mhm.
that was my, and then I'm like, and now I'm getting into traveling. And so I just came up with like Yoga Meets Travel. And over the course of my flying career, I would go, I'd fly places, like even through flight attendant training, I was going to yoga. That was like me keeping my sanity. I was just going to
Mhm.
yoga everywhere I went, going to studios, trying new things. Like, it just became a lot of my, it was my habit that then, because my page grew, became my identity.
Mhm.
Um,
You also said it was like your church.
Yes. Yeah. I multiple times, and multiple people would say that in yoga too. So you would just
Mhm.
casually say that. Like, I remember there was one teacher at Raw that would say, like, let's go to church before he started the class.
Yep.
That's what
I
he
used
would
to call
say.
it that too. Yeah.
Or take me to church.
Yep.
And I remember a girlfriend of mine when I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, just a few years ago, had asked me to go to church, and I was like, no, I'm going to yoga today. And I was like, honestly, I feel like I get what I need more. I get more of what I need from there than I ever have from the church.
Yeah, and what's so crazy is you don't even realize, like, the profoundness of what you're saying in that, because
No,
at the time, you really like, when I was in it, I didn't think I was worshiping something, that's not what I thought I was doing. I thought I was just, like you said, seeking healing, seeking peace,
yep,
but it
yep.
really is a form of worship of these pagan gods, and so that is why very just, subliminally, we're like, "No, this is my church now."
Well, and the thing is, you can even go in there knowing who you represent. And like, even before I stopped going to yoga, which was now 3.5 months ago, I was praying on it and still going. I was like, God, if this is really something you want to take away from me, like make this not feel right, or like work on me to where it like reveal this, what you want me to see. And but I'd walk into a studio with my cross necklace. Ever since my first demonic encounter, I have never taken off my cross necklace. There's no other jewelry I want on my body, to be honest. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, and it's a good conversation starter. It is like, especially on a plane, I feel like it gives people a sense of peace when other people see it. And like,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't, then it's rattling something in them that is not good. So, so anyway, like, but I would even boldly go into a studio and be like, I know who I'm representing now. Like, even after, I was like, I know who I'm representing now, and I'm going to be like a Jesus representative in this space. That was
Mhm.
like kind of like, I know my identity, and like, I still like this practice. And so I'm going to go and represent him when I'm there. And
Yeah.
so it was a process. It was a process to reveal the things he needed to reveal to me. Um, the first thing that really, like, before he kind of spoke on it directly. So like, that's all going down. I'm still going to yoga and I'm praying on it. And I'm like, if this is something you want to, like. And there was one day where I was actually in Shavasana, which is the end of yoga. You're laying there and you're like in meditation, which I
Yeah.
still feel like a lot of times that I had like downloads or things that came to me, I do think it still was God in that space when I
Yeah.
could calm my mind. But I need to find out how to do that outside of a place that's like swarming with evil.
Yes, yeah.
Um, but Jess Meets Travel actually came to me one time in yoga when I was like praying on it, and I was like, "That's kind of crazy." I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't want to change my name. And it was weird that had come
Wow.
up there in that like blank space, and I was like, I just kind of still like pushed it off to the side, and I was still just kind of waiting, waiting, waiting. So I'd started going to the small group at my church, the one that I had like got saved at December of last year, and there was this lady who, our small group was like girls and guys. It is girls and guys and like young single people. And this older lady walked in one night and she was like, Holy Spirit like guided me to come in this room. Like, I know that this room is really hungry for Jesus. Like, do you guys care if I join you? And we're like, come on in. And so she came in and she had this like she I guess is a seer, which I had to look this up now. This is like she sees angels and demons on a regular basis. And she like called out this girl in the room towards the end, like very not in a bad way called out, but just was like, hey, I have a message for you if you're open to hearing it from the Lord. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, there's been three angels like pouring oil over you like this whole time in this room. And
Mm,
we're all like, what? Like this is
yeah.
crazy. And so anyway, she was like, she had kind of said that like what you've been through, like the Lord knows he's always been with you. And it was more personal than that, right? Like, but I'm just kind of giving a general message. And she
Yeah.
goes, it's time for you to share your testimony because it's going to help other people that have gone through the same thing as you. And she starts breaking
Oh.
down crying and we're all like, oh my God, like what's happening? And we didn't think she was going to like open it up right there and say it, but she ended up saying it. And she had talked about how like she was, sexually abused as a child from like a family member and it just like created this like ripple of like, other people. And we all just laid hands on her and started praying over her. And so anyways, this lady, Anita, who's the seer, she had a profound effect on our group. And I'm like, wow, I need to talk to that lady at some point. And it wasn't even that
Yes.
night. It was like a few weeks later. I was like, I need to tell her about the experience that I had. The first demonic encounter I had that was the most intense ever.
Yeah.
I think it will probably always be because I think the closer I get to him, the more like I saw what I needed to see and I'm good,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
you know?
No, I can't wait to hear about that as well.
Yeah.
Um, so
But
when you spoke to her, is she the one that kind of gave you this
really brought
message
it to my
from
yes.
God about
And it's
yoga?
something I kind of already knew. I
Yeah.
kind of already knew and was like,
Yep.
you know? And
Yes.
like just like, oh, I need it to be more obvious because I don't know about that, or whatever. Just kind of just like dragging
Yeah.
my feet on it a little bit.
Yeah, but like
And
deep inside you knew. I know what you mean by that.
yes, yes. You're like, do I really know? And he's like, how much more obvious does it need to get? So
Yeah.
I didn't even get to tell her, everything I experienced. There's a lot to cover in the last 2 years. And I was just telling her about my demonic experience. And then she goes, well, so I'll get into the story. I tell her what happened. And
Yeah.
she goes, and she knows nothing about me. No one in that group knew anything about even my Instagram, or I wasn't connected to those people in that way, which I kind of liked being separate, and it was still Yoga Meets Travel at the time. And no one knew any details about that. And especially her, she was like new there.
Yeah.
And so I described this, what happened to me. And, and she know what that's from, don't you? And I was like, obviously not, I'm like, I thought it was tied to alcohol because I had given up.
Mm,
That's another story, which I think was another stronghold in my life, which I've heard your stories and that's like, we can get into that. But
yeah.
so uh, I was like, no. And she goes, that demon you're describing is the Kundalini spirit, and how it moved is like a snake is the Kundalini spirit. She goes, do you do yoga?
Oh man.
And I felt like the blood just like left my face.
Oh.
I was just like, I was just like, I didn't know what to say. Like the first thing I said
Okay.
was, I said, well, that's going to be really hard because I practice yoga religiously. And she said, did you hear what you just said?
Yeah.
And I said, I mean, like, I don't mean it like that, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you said what you
and then,
said.
right. And she said, did you hear what you just said? And I was like, but like so much of my identity is in yoga. And she
Mhm.
goes, did you hear what you just said? And I was just like,
Conviction. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. You know what I love about this too is when God spoke to you in Shavasana, he didn't just say, okay, you have to get rid of this thing that you identify with. No, he reminded you of what your real identity is, what your real name is. Jess Meets Travel, not
yeah,
Yoga Meets Travel. He didn't just take this thing away without reminding you of what your real identity is. And then I love that he brought this woman of God into your life to just confirm this to you.
uh,
That's so good. And like you said, like the first thing, the roots, the history, it is rooted in Hinduism. We know these things. And now God is like directly speaking to you about these things. And for me personally, like I started to know yoga was demonic too, just based on the fruits of my lifestyle, like when I was following that religiously, like the fruits were not good. Like I thought I was seeking light and love and peace and healing, but I was at the same time destroying myself, destroying my body, destroying my reputation, involved in lots of sins that were just
Yep.
destroying me. And
Yep.
so the fruits of it were also evil, and that was another thing that helped me realize that it wasn't what it claimed to be.
Yep. The spirit, I feel like the spirit of seduction is very prevalent in yoga. It makes you
Mhm.
almost want to be like obsessed with your own body and how it moves, like sexually.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so now this is gonna tie into this serpent demon that you saw.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to hear about this and just, yeah, that connection with the Kundalini, spirit. Yeah, take us through that. So this is like
Yeah.
the most
One more
pivotal.
thing I will add about yoga that he kind of dropped into my spirit as I was going
Sure.
through this process of just like deeper understanding is that not only is it not rooted in him, which remind me about I need to tell you a story about a yoga bolster and the brand Manduka specifically. I will have to tell you about that, but
Okay.
which blew my mind. Holy Spirit revealed things that needed to get out of my house, and we'll get into that. But God revealed to me because I know there'll be people that listen to this that even if they go to yoga once a week or once a month, and they're like, oh, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's a slippery slope, but
It is.
trust me, I know. So, but it's wild that he let me dance in it for so long. But clearly, I wasn't ready for the revelation he was going to bring me. But until I was ready, I guess.
Yeah.
But so I would always do vinyasa is what I was certified in, and vinyasa was what I would take, which is like breath to movement, a flow, music involved. It's more fun, I guess, than the
Yep.
other types of yoga. It's not as serious as like Bikram or the ones that I would consider kind of boring. I like the music and the more of the workout piece of it. That's what I liked. And so that was my choice of yoga. And he pointed out to me that not only are you in a place that's not rooted of me and where I'm not really welcome, but you are vinyasa is almost like a trance. Once you get really good at yoga, it is a moving meditation. Just like a lot of workouts can be, but
Mm.
again, it's rooted in something not of him.
Yeah.
So it is a moving meditation where you're kind of like mentally checked out for the whole hour, which is part of what you like about it, right? But
Yeah.
you are under a trance of something much bigger than you, rooted in something much that not of God, and you are at the mercy of the teacher's heart posture. So where their heart sits is what you're dancing in, and it doesn't
Mm.
always mean it doesn't mean that person's evil. It just odds are they don't have a strong relationship with Jesus, who's actually the Lord
Yep.
and Savior. And a lot of broken people are drawn to yoga. And I say that coming
Mhm.
from a person who was broken, drawn to yoga. Not that I'm
Amen.
like negating who's there, because we're all broken, no whether
Yeah.
and we're in yoga or not in yoga, you know? And you are under that spell essentially of like, and you're at the mercy of where their heart sits. And even if you know where your heart sits, you're dancing with someone else for a whole hour. And there's other things in that room that are invited and welcome that
Yep.
could mess with you, attach to you, you bring home with you. I don't know how it all really works, but it's dangerous. It's
Wow.
dangerous.
That's so good because I used to say I can't just sit still and meditate. I used to say yoga is my meditation because I have to be moving.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense, a moving meditation. And I'm just playing through the different like spiritual gurus I've had and like yoga teachers I've had when I went through my yoga teacher training. And I know like this is what like they're the ones that really led me into the demonic.
Yeah.
Deeper with the tarot cards and the rituals and the sex magic and like all this kinds of stuff because that's what they were into and that's what sat on the throne of their hearts like you
Yes.
said. And so it started with that small seed of letting them guide you through a yoga practice and before you know it you're doing the tarot cards with them, you're going to the moon circles with them, you're
Yeah.
doing full-blown sex magic with them. Like I
Yeah.
mean I am an extremist so I ended up in that regard.
Yeah.
But no, you're so right. Yeah. Who is teaching you and who is leading you because you're opening yourself up too. Like yoga's all about like opening yourself up and letting whatever happens happen. And it's like a big portal opener
Yeah.
into
It's the same
your
thing as even
spirit.
just like when you think about how personal like getting intimate and physical with somebody is like, you are dancing with that person, basically, like
Yeah.
flowing breath to movement. It's very spiritual for an hour. So you are agreeing to where whatever is going on in their
Mhm.
life for an hour. And you're like, and another thing with yoga was that like I mean, it would be the same thing if I'd like go out and drink the night before, then I wanted to go to yoga to sweat it out the next day, which people still do that with any workout. But I mean, it was just kind of like you always felt like you needed more, or you felt like you couldn't be at peace without it, which
Mhm.
that shouldn't ever be anything you say about anything other than God.